What makes an ad memorable?
What makes an ad effective?
Does anyone other than Erik and Matt care?
Answers to these questions and everything their wives never wanted to know about advertising await you in this episode of Erik and Matt Like Ads. I'm Erik.
And I'm Matt. And this is episode 1 of Erik and Matt Like Ads.
Do you think this is a good idea, Matt?
Yeah, I do.
Really, you sure?
No, not at all.
I've never actually done one of these before. Not like this. I've been a guest on podcasts before, but I've never actually hosted one before. This is harder than it looks, dude.
It is. About an hour into us trying to shoot our first episode, and we're now just starting it. So,
and we're at and we're at about 12 seconds of runtime.
Yeah,
that's okay.
And we started planning this. Was it 6 weeks ago? So
yeah, something like that.
We should have brought somebody in on this.
That's the lesson learned: is Erik and Matt not only like ads, but Erik and Matt need to be organized, and they need a handler. Well, you know what? We'll get that for episode 2.
Yeah. In the last few weeks, just around the office here, people have sort of been making jokes about how prepared we think we are, and maybe we're not. And yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, they're right. That's okay. Whatever, But cool. It's not everyone around the office likes ads. All right, it's Erik and Matt like ads. So there.
That's a good point. But it's not Erik. Yeah, right. It's not Erik and Matt like podcasts. We're just trying to do one.
Or Erik and Matt like to be really organized and structured.
Yeah. So this isn't what we're best at, but we're going to talk about something that at least I think we're pretty good at.
Yeah, I'd say decent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Erik, why don't you tell us what we're going to be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about some ads today, Matt. I know. So I thought inaugural episode, right? We should probably come out hot and fresh, so it was something that people can remember and maybe also thought was awesome as well. So I thought first episode, let's go big. Let's go Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry. What do you think? You remember some of those?
I could go for a Snickers right now. Need a little pick-me-up.
Yeah, I can't. I'm actually allergic to peanuts, but that's neither here nor there. I'll get through it. That's fine. I can talk about peanuts. I just can't eat them.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So for this episode, we're talking about the Snickers You're Not You When You're Hungry campaign. So Snickers, everybody knows Snickers, right? It's like a super, super popular global candy bar made by the Mars company, invented back in the early 30s and named after a horse. Didn't know that actually in researching this. Snickers was named after a horse. Frank Mars, the inventor and founder, his wife bought a bunch of horses after he died and named the Snickers bar after one of the horses because she wanted to name something after one of the horses. Not sure why. Anyway.
Can I interject here?
No.
I did know that.
Go ahead. What?
I did. I don't know how.
Well, maybe you should be doing this part.
No, I shouldn't. I don't know how I knew that, where I learned that, but that is something that is stuck in this part of my brain somewhere.
It must be all the betting on ponies that you do. Was I not supposed to share that detail? So I guess Snickers wasn't doing so well before this campaign. Sales had been declining for years. They were having a hard time really zeroing in on a messaging strategy that would help kind of reverse those declining sales. And so they brought in BBDO. I guess they're a big advertising agency. I don't know, maybe you've heard of them. Did you know the O in BBDO stands for Osborne, as in Alex Osborne, as in the father of brainstorming? Also, by the way, Buffalo, New York, right?
I'm gonna bum you out here. I did know that. Once again, I did know that.
Yeah, you sure you shouldn't be doing this part? I feel like this is just one enormous setup. Anyway, so BBDO come in and they say, okay, like you've been trading on these kind of big ideas of satisfaction on one side and the idea of recharging from hunger on the other side. And that they said the common denominator for them was hunger. I screwed that up. I didn't say that right, Matt.
That's okay.
But you know what? But this is raw.
Power
It's
through.
real. We're not going to edit this out. We're going to go with it. So it was like energy recharge on the one side, satisfaction on the other. And what they determined was hunger was the thing in the middle. All right. So they based the idea on hunger and how this idea, and they directed it towards males. For some reason, they thought like the market for this was males. So they came up with this idea that like, well, when you're hungry, you're just not really yourself. All right. And that was the big idea. And that is where this whole campaign came from. So enough about that. Why don't we dive in and why don't we watch the spot that launched it all? There was an ambulance going by. This is such a dumpster fire. The spot that launched it all, the 2010 Super Bowl commercial.
Mike, what is your deal, man?
Oh, come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby!
Whoa.
Eat a Snickers. Better?
Better. I'm all bet! That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
Not bad, huh?
That's something I've never seen before. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, I like that one. I especially like that it so I did a little research on this, right? And one thing that I know that I uncovered was back in 2010, this was like kind of what kickstarted Betty White's kind of comeback and like her memedom, right? I don't know how true that is, but to me, that sounded about right. Which, hey, even if Snickers, didn't sell more, which I believe you're about to tell us that they did, at least it gave us Betty White memes.
Yeah. I can return the favor now. I did know that we take that for granted that like Betty White is just like this like rock star, right?
Right.
But yeah, it was this commercial that kind of helped relaunch her into the public eye again and kind of
Yeah. So tell me, what are your feelings on that, right? Like, so celebrity in your ad, let's say you're Snickers and you're bringing back Betty White. Like, you may not know that you're doing it, but then Betty White becomes like this rock star, right? How do you feel about that if you're Snickers?
Well, I think it's awesome. I think it showed a side of Betty White that I think we weren't, totally familiar with, right? And I think that's one of the things that makes the spot work so well is it's completely unexpected. All right. Like, which so big deal for me is like, doesn't defy expectations, right? Because that's going to have a lot to do with how interesting it is, right? So the fact that they used Betty White, the whole fact that it's this football game's happening, why is Betty White in the middle of it? Why is it Betty White? Why is there an elderly woman in this to begin with, and it happens to be Betty White? And then, I mean, she gets hit. I mean, that's amazing, right? And then obviously she transforms back to the actual, to the dude, and you don't see that coming, right? We know now, years later, having seen so many of these commercials, we know what's going to happen. But in that time, like, no one knew that was going to happen. So totally unexpected, could not have predicted it. And it showed a side of Betty White that, again, I think was unexpected. It's like, did she really just say that's not what your girlfriend said, right? Or something to that effect, right? Like, totally unexpected, not what you would think would come out of the mouth of Betty White, yet there it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't always love celebrities in ads because I think there's always the chance that the celebrity dominates the ad and what everybody talks about. I I think BBDO was, clever enough and smart enough to, make the product a part of the joke, right? A part of the celebrity, because it, literally transforms Betty White back into, as you so aptly put it, the dude, right? So from that respect, I love it. I think nobody's ever really going to call this just the Betty White ad. I think that makes it the Betty White Snickers ad.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that another element that I enjoyed about it was at the end when you think the ad's over. And I love this technique, by the way. And you see Geico does this a lot, Progressive does this a lot, and they're not the only ones. Those are the ones that come to mind. But when you think the ad's over, the ad isn't actually over. There's this other unexpected element that comes along that's surprising, and with that surprise comes delight. And so when the older gentleman gets clobbered, and his name, I looked him up, I was like, I know, who is that guy? How do I know that guy? That's he's an actor. His name, oh wait, I'm sorry, you already know this, don't you?
No, I don't. You got me this one. I didn't know that.
What's up?
This is a famous actor or an actor?
I would say famous in his own right.
Okay.
And probably more famous to a generation that's just one generation older than you and I. So that's Abe Vigoda. And his most famous role was as Salvatore Tessio in the Godfather movies. I think he's in the first one and in the second one. And then I guess he was also a staple character on the Barney Miller Show in the 70s, which I really have very little frame of reference for. So those are the two big things for him. So again, similar generation as Betty White. I don't totally know why they chose Abe Vigoda for that role, right? How that ended up happening. But I thought also it worked really well. I thought he was perfect. His reaction in that role was perfect. And again, I loved how unexpected it was.
So this was 2010. So we're talking 11 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if I even really knew who Betty White was back then. But obviously I wasn't necessarily the target at that point in time. I know it's not that long ago, but.
So you didn't grow up on Golden Girls reruns?
I did not. So I was the eldest of three boys. My poor mother was outnumbered, 4-1. If we include my father. Grew up on Star Trek. Grew up on, Nickelodeon. I'm a Nick kid. So, Hey Arnold, Rocko's Modern Life, Beavis and Butthead, Ren and Stimpy.
Gotcha.
So no Golden Girls.
All right.
How about you?
I was we watched a lot of Golden Girls. And I probably watched it when it was still actually just like on air before it went into to reruns. I also, by the way, am one of three boys.
Oh.
So we have this very similar situation going on there. Other things about this ad that I enjoy, because for me, right, because
this is the Betty White podcast.
That's right. For me, how I judge effectiveness of an advertisement is on three things. Does it grab attention? Or a better phrase would be, does it demand attention?
Okay.
Does it defy expectations? And does it create conversation? Right. So that's those are usually the three measures that I use. And certainly we talked about the defying expectations, and it does it very well throughout. I think the whole demand attention, it certainly does that. Right from the get-go, there's a lot of action and activity. And so I think it pulls you in to try to figure out what's going on. And you very quickly see that Betty White is in the fray. And now, boom, okay, something's not right here. I want to know what's going to happen. So I definitely think that it demands attention, and it moves quickly enough to hold your attention throughout the piece. We talked about the expectation thing. And then on the creating conversation, absolutely. I mean, it was did you see that? Did you see that ad? Did you see Betty White? Did you see what she said? The comment about the girlfriend, that sort of stuff. So I definitely think that it is conversation worthy. And so for those reasons, I think that it is an excellent ad. And by the way, the campaign overall, not just this ad. We're going to watch 2 more. We got 2 more of these in the series of this. They made many, many of these, and not just television spots, but we're just going to look at the TV spots today. In the end, they attributed a 16% global increase in sales of Snickers to the "You're Not You When You're Hungry" campaign. And that's been in effect now for about 10 years. And I think they're still sticking with it. I had seen an article recently, the CMO, someone over there was talking about the value of commitment to a campaign and to a big idea. And I think, again, Snickers and the "You're Not You When You're Hungry" campaign is a perfect example of that. I mean, think of the really big brands. Who has stuck with the same campaign concept for 10 years? Like maybe not even 10 months, it seems these days, right? So I think that's pretty impressive.
Yes and no. I'm going to disagree with you. I think a lot to it. I think many of them bring it back, right? Seasonality. What happens? What does Coca-Cola do every Christmas? Immediately you think
True.
polar
Yeah.
bears, right?
Yeah. True.
M&Ms.
True.
M&Ms is
Yeah, that's a good one.
it's the little M&Ms and Santa Claus and all their antics.
Yeah. I was thinking Geico, the Gecko specifically, not necessarily all the different things they've done along the way, but the Gecko, the 15 minutes thing, of course, also is something that they've been consistently using.
The nationwide jingle has, I believe, was written in the 60s. I'm not going to sing it, but I think it's probably in your head already. And
Just you saying it, absolutely, yeah.
But I think, like, when you think about big brands, most of them have something that they've done for a long time. Some frame of reference that most of anything that they have brand wise is built on. And I think that's a large part of what has made them successful, right? Otherwise, why did they advertise? It's not just for entertainment. It's for it's to drive sales to their brand, to drive awareness. I look at it kind of similarly. I usually use memorable, motivating, and truthful. I think they sort of correlate to the things that you have said. So, of course, you want to demand attention, but you want people to remember it afterwards, right? So you can demand attention, and then if you completely let them down, they're either not going to remember it or they're going to remember it negatively, because there is a such thing as negative advertising. That screw that, I'm never going to buy from that brand ever again. You may not do it intentionally, just like you don't make that purchase. It's just like how you've seen these ads and you went for a Snickers bar rather than a Twix in that moment. I think it's equally important to be memorable, and then the motivating, right? It's making you want to pick up that Snickers instead, and I think that this campaign does that very well. And the truthful, they're not making some ridiculous claim that it's going to help you play a better football game. It's just saying that you're not you. I think that's incredibly important for this, because anytime a viewer, the public, any of us see something that is so clearly like, yeah, right, that makes that all of that money that they spent on getting Betty White and producing this whole thing and coming up with this concept. Anytime somebody says, yeah, right, you're dead in the water. I think that's why truthful, telling the truth in your advertising is so incredibly important. So with that, I think we've both said what we wanted to say about this one. Shall we move on to the one that I'm probably most excited about, because there is a certain Mr. Bean in it?
Yeah, let's do it.
弱成这样也敢闯江湖？
一个就手软着了。
别打你的二破拳了，来条 Snickers。兄弟，怎么样？
来劲了。
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers, get some nuts.
So that one was released in the UK, right, in 2014.
And I love this one. I had never seen it before you sent it over to me. I think this is the
Gotcha.
strongest. I think this is the strongest of all three. I love Mr. Bean though, so it could be just a bias.
Sure.
But I think it's
sure.
smart that they used, somebody recognizable. If this was a UK campaign, right? I'm sure Betty White is plenty famous in the UK. I don't know, maybe she isn't, right? But knowing that Rowan Atkinson is just so beloved, at least that's my understanding of it. I think it was definitely smart.
Yeah, I think you made a comment earlier about celebrity use in advertising, and I'm typically not usually a fan of it myself, actually.
Right.
I think for some of the reasons you mentioned, but also sometimes I think it's just like there's something about it seems like the cheap play. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, what we're going to do is we're going to, we'll purchase, some attention here, right? By, putting this famous person, in our ad, whatever. But I think that the way that Snickers has done it is really well done. They did it in, I don't know what I'd say most of their spots for this, but a great majority of them, I believe, had celebrities. There was one with Aretha Franklin, I think, right, in it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that they did it effectively. All right. And certainly like having, Rowan Atkinson in it, as an actor, and maybe that's part of it too, is like Betty White's an actress or an actor, right? Rowan Atkinson, an actor, right? So what they can bring to the spot, I think, is different than what perhaps like putting a football player or like an athlete or something in there. But I think that this one was a little longer. When this one is got about a minute running time on this one, but you don't feel like it's long. You're not like waiting for the thing to be over because it totally hooks you, and because you don't know what the heck is happening. Like why is this happening? It's a familiar setting, using that kind of like that absurd kung fu kind of movie style, right? Which was, I don't know when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out, but kind of, a little bit before this one was produced, but kind of recently enough to be able to like be familiar with the idea of that. But then there's Mr. Bean, and why is he on a roof? Obviously he can't do the things that they're doing. It's hilarious, right? And obviously, his facial expressions, are like everything, Again, I think it's unexpected. Again, we know watching the spot, we know what's supposed to happen. We know the punchline at the end is that it's not really Mr. Bean. It's probably another one of these, kung fu masters or whatever, ninjas, whatever. But when you first see this spot and you don't know that that's what's going to happen, it's totally unexpected, right? And which I think is brilliant, right? Like how far into it do you get before you actually are like, oh, I know what's going to happen. You almost get to the point of it's like, there's the Snickers bar. And it's like, oh, dang it. Why didn't I see this coming? I should have seen this coming, but you totally didn't. And so it's super well done. Right. And so again, I think it defies expectations in that way. I think it does demand attention because there's so many interesting elements, and the plot to it just doesn't make sense. So your brain's like, all right, what's happening here? I want to figure this out. Where is this leading to? And of course it entertains you along the way. Right. I know truthful is a thing to you. And I would wonder about something like this, like really, there's nothing that truthful about this, right? But I would say it was still an effective spot in the campaign though, right? Even though it is not really grounded in much reality at all.
Sure. I think it kind of gets a pass on that because it is so very clearly kind of like a fantasy world that it's occurring in, right? Nobody, it almost kind of like reads like a movie set, right? Like, that this is this is a movie, this is something that's happening, I think it's actually like kind of smart that they used Mr. Bean for this, because this is something that his character in one of his movies or shows would have gotten into. Like, this is like, I mean, or at least you can imagine, right, actually happening in one of these shows.
So
it's not
there's
Rowan
what it
Atkinson,
is.
it's Mr. Bean.
It's true to Mr. Bean. And that's
Yes.
what helps to sell it, because I could totally see Mr. Bean finding himself in this set of circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right about the suspended disbelief, right? Like, it is clearly absurd and fantastical. And though it is, quote, based in reality, right? There's many reality hooks, as we might say, to the spot. It clearly is fantasy. And so you're right. So you turn that part of your brain off. Yeah.
Whereas playing a pickup football game in a field, like, that is, that's pretty realistic for most of us, at least. So I think they did a great job with this one, to kind of, overcome that. Somebody's thinking about it the way I think about it, apparently.
Yeah. Cool. No, so a good example of how they made it appropriate for the market, right? For the UK,
right? And
also, accomplish all those other things that we discussed along the way. So
we've got one more. Let me cue it up here.
Marcia, what happened?
Peter hit me in the nose with a football. I can't go to the dance like this.
Well, I'm sure it was an accident, sweetheart.
An eye for an eye. That's what Dad always says.
I never said that, honey.
Shut up! Time to teach Peter a lesson.
Marcia, eat a Snickers.
Why?
You get a little hostile when you're hungry. Better? Better.
Marcia.
Jan, this isn't about you.
It never is.
Can I start on this one?
yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I think my favorite part about this, and it's interesting because when you first, brought this to me and said, I want to do this one, I think I even said to you, it doesn't really do much for me. I don't really love it. I watched it a couple of times, and it didn't occur to me, the last joke, right? The Jan joke it had never landed for me, that Jan is never herself because everybody ignores her, and she, so all she needs is a Snickers, and she could also become a Marcia. And it never landed for me. And to some degree, I wonder if that's bad, because how many other people did it not land for?
Right.
But potentially, maybe the Brady Bunch generation. So, a little bit older than us. Maybe that did land for all of them, and I'm just not the target of this particular ad. I think that's an important thing to remember when we're talking about these, is that we're not always the target. So often our opinion of it is somewhat irrelevant. That's definitely something that my mother may have gotten, right? But I'm not, I didn't grow up watching the Brady Bunch. I've seen it enough to kind of understand that now. But I think that's my favorite part. I think it kind of goes back to the first one where there's like that surprise at the end, the surprise ending, which I think is brilliant. But yeah, it took me a while, and now that I've gotten that little nugget of a joke, I kind of really like this one.
Cool. Look at that, huh? Making a believer out of them, right? Sometimes it just takes a little persistence, right?
And is that maybe demonstrating the importance of consistency and frequency with your advertising?
I was going to go there. Yeah. We get those comments on occasion when we're building campaigns for our clients, and they're like, there's certain elements in there that might be subtle, right? Or they're, and like, well, people fill in the blank there. Well, this, concerns that are actually not really concerns when you explain, people aren't going to see this thing one time or hear this thing one time. It's going to be repeated again and again and again. And so, yes, they might pick up different aspects or nuances of it over time. And I think that makes it have a longer shelf life as well, because there's
Absolutely.
more there to
It's a
appreciate,
really
whether
good-
you pick up on it or not, right? There's something happening kind of like deeper below the surface. I actually did not pick up on that the Jan could be Marcia. That's brilliant. And I often wonder with stuff like that, are you brilliant in observing it, in that the creators subconsciously put that in there because you're talking about like core human identity, self-actualization type things that every single person on the planet is going through, whether you consciously acknowledge it or not. So like, like you create something, you don't always know everything that you're baking into that thing. And people say, oh, I read that, or I saw that, and it made me think of this, or that was so cool how you invoked this. And you're like, yeah, I had no idea that was in there. And it's cool that that's in there. I had no idea that that was in there. So I think that's actually pretty brilliant that you made that observation, because it did not occur to me. What I appreciated about it was just the fact that, hey, there was always this thing between Marcia and Jan. I did grow up not watching it when it was originally on, but watching the reruns of it. And when we weren't watching Golden Girls, we were watching the Brady Bunch and maybe some Silver Spoon. Ricky Schroeder, no, anyone? So yeah, another one you maybe just missed. So anyway, so I just appreciated the fact that it was surprising, like, oh, hey, there's Jan now, right? And of course, Jan is Steve Buscemi, and he just storms off. He never actually gets to transform into Jan. So like it's odd in that way, because you've got Mr. and Mrs. Brady, right? So you've got like file footage of them, right, doing this, which I think is also very cool that they took that. Again, what things that I think make it interesting and make it watchable again and again is because there's all these kind of unique and interesting kind of techniques that they're doing. You've got kind of fake Mr. and Mrs. Brady, but being applied in an effectively real way. You've got fake Marcia, but a modern actor doing it, right? And then you pan over to Steve Buscemi. The whole thing, it's just really bizarre, right? But it totally works. Totally works. And throughout the whole thing, you're feeling good as you're doing it, right? Like the whole, like you always say, Dad, an eye for an eye. Mr. Brady never in a million years said that, and would never say that, right? Would never say that, right? So that's like, it's absurd and it's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's funny. I don't know that you made me a believer in it. I'm still on the fence on this one, because I think it's almost too over the top. I think what's his name? Is it Danny Trejo?
Yeah, Danny Trejo. Yeah.
I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think something about all of it is just a little bit too much for my taste, right? But obviously it's worked. And that was absolutely what year did that one come out?
That was 2015.
2015. And
it was also a Super Bowl commercial. So I don't know if that's
here we are.
mentioning.
Here we are 6 years later, still talking about it. And I think it's a memorable ad, right? Like it is incredibly memorable. I think similarly to the Rowan Atkinson one, it doesn't really need to pass too much of like the truthful test, because it is so like fantastic.
It's a TV show. We're watching like an excerpt, right, of a TV show, so we know it's fiction.
And then as far as motivating, I think first of all, I think a lot of Super Bowl ads, this is usually where they fall short in my mind.
Yeah.
I think if we did like a series of Super Bowl ads, I think typically it's the motivating piece that it's always great at demanding attention, even though it's the Super Bowl, right? Like most people are already attentive, right? You've already got that attention. It's that motivation to like actually go out and sort of do the thing that the advertiser wants you to do, right?
Yeah.
Which in this case is pick up a Snickers instead of a Twix or whatever it is. Yeah. Twix Mars also. So
yeah, Twix is Mars, and that's actually something that they did. I can't remember what market they did it in.
Saw that.
No, you're
I
good.
liked those. I thought that was incredibly clever.
So we should tell people what we're actually talking about, right?
We should, shouldn't we? That's good.
Yeah.
Good radio.
So it was in print. They had other Mars candy bars, like the Mars bar, and I think Almond Joy was one, and Twix was the other. And they had the same packaging and wrapping for, let's say, a Twix, but it said Snickers on it. And an Almond Joy looks just like an Almond Joy, but it says Snickers on it. And the whole idea there is you're not you when you're hungry. So their other candy bars themselves are not themselves. It's again, like it's kind of meta. It's
a little meta. Yeah.
It's cool.
I liked
though.
it
It's
though.
cool.
I like
You know,
it though. And I
to the
usually
point-
don't go for that kind of stuff.
To the point of motivating, because I think on that, I feel like, yeah, that's a useful mechanism or way to think about it. But I think a lot of it comes down to, how does this thing make me feel, right? Do I like you more? Am I more open to you? And are you more favorable or vice versa to me as a result of this interaction, right? When it comes so, because you're right, we're not really analyzing when we grab a candy bar, right? There's not, I think, like, at least not for me, this is not an intellectual pursuit when I'm trying to select a candy bar, right? So I think that there is this kind of like automatic reflexive response that really great advertising can, I think, accomplish by baking associations into you through how the ad performs, right?
Sure.
So that's a wonky way to say that. But like
okay.
Because I like Betty White, because I also think there's a common denominator between the people that they choose. They always choose these celebrities that seem to be super, super well liked. All right. You know, so I like Betty White. She makes me feel good. You associate something with Betty White, I might feel better about that thing because it's associated with Betty White. Steve Buscemi, Rowan Atkinson, Danny Trejo, all right, you know. So I think that there could the motivating value there could simply be because I like the Brady Bunch. I like, you know, and these different things. And then it's okay, that makes me more likely to choose a Snickers bar the next time. And so that accomplishes the same objective of motivation. Because if the goal is to get people, and we know that people do things based on familiarity, comfort, reinforcement, all that sort of stuff, right? So maybe it is doing that. It's just not doing it in the same explicit manner, perhaps. Like a drop everything and go out and do this sort of thing, you know? Or put this on your list to do.
Of course, that's not what I mean by motivating.
Sure. As I said that, I realize that it's probably an overstatement, but
right.
But there are some ads that operate that way, that it's like, this ad should get you to freaking get a MyPillow right now. Like, get your MyPillow after you watch this ad, right? I don't know. It's what came to me.
Let's not get into that. You know, so when I talk about motivating, so everybody has, or most people have, you know, their favorite, you know, let's say candy bar in that category, their favorite of the category, right? Motivating for me would be to take a Twix person, you know, a Twix man, and turn them into a Snickers man, right? Or whatever, somebody who normally grabs M&Ms and turn them into a Snickers man. I'm coming around to your side there, that the motivation is just the familiarity, and you're using all of these other things. I think that's really, really insightful. But there's just still something missing for me on that. And I think we're not going to get it, you know, I'm not going to get it in this episode.
What if we just talk about it for another hour?
I know, right? Remember when we said that we wanted to limit these to, 10 to 15 minutes?
I was actually just thinking about that. Yeah, this is, we'll talk about that offline.
We can edit that out.
Yeah.
So this is our first episode, the ending of our first episode. I think maybe we should, talk about where people can find us, and maybe something that we would like them to do, like subscribe, maybe share with their friends, things like that.
It was at that moment that Erik and I realized we had no plan for closing out this podcast. So I'm doing it now. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to invite you to listen to our future episodes that we will be releasing probably every week. But again, not a super great plan just yet. We're working it out. We will be available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all of that stuff. Anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And if there's somewhere that we have missed, just let us know. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
And you can find us, maybe and that way it can actually be like mapped out and done effectively.
Yeah, we can do that. I've already decided. We've done it, man.
We're done?
We've recorded our first episode.
This was such a dumpster fire, dude.
Okay.
No, I've enjoyed it. It was awesome. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going to pop your top while I screw off.